If you've been struggling with stress, overwhelm, and the constant pressure of modern life, if anxiety has become your baseline and peace feels like a luxury you can't afford, if you're exhausted from managing responsibilities while feeling like you're barely keeping your head above water, it's because you haven't yet accessed the one quantum frequency that transforms survival mode into what ancient wisdom traditions called the welfare state, a level of consciousness where well-being becomes your natural, effortless experience. This isn't about positive thinking. This isn't about stress management techniques. This isn't about finding work-life balance or optimizing your schedule. This is about mastering a specific frequency of awareness that instantly shifts your entire nervous system from defense and reactivity into a state where well-being, peace, and natural happiness become as automatic as breathing, regardless of external circumstances. The synchronicity that brought you to this understanding right now isn't coincidental. Your consciousness has evolved to recognize the electromagnetic signature of true welfare, not welfare as government assistance, but welfare as the natural state of consciousness when it operates from coherence rather than chaos, from trust rather than fear, from recognition of its unlimited nature rather than identification with stress and limitation. Something in the fabric of reality recognized that you're ready to transcend the survival consciousness that keeps most humans trapped in cycles of stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, and access the welfare frequency that makes optimal well-being your default state, rather than something you occasionally experience when conditions are perfect. Your soul remembers something profound about the relationship between consciousness and welfare that modern psychology doesn't understand. There is a specific frequency generated by coherent awareness that creates what neuroscientists are discovering as optimal brain states, patterns of neural activity that generate natural happiness, effortless calm, and sustainable energy without dependence on external conditions. Right now, as these words reach your consciousness, can you feel it beginning? That subtle but unmistakable settling in your nervous system, the gentle release of tension you didn't even realize you were carrying. This is your bioelectric field beginning to entrain to welfare frequency, the electromagnetic pattern that transforms stress responses into coherent responses automatically. You've been sensing changes in how you handle stress lately, haven't you? Situations that would normally trigger anxiety or overwhelm, leaving you surprisingly calm. Challenges that used to drain your energy somehow becoming manageable without the exhaustion you expected. Moments of unexpected peace arising in the middle of chaotic circumstances. All of this has been preparing you for this recognition, this activation, this shift into mastering the welfare frequency that makes optimal well-being your permanent baseline rather than a temporary experience that depends on everything going right in your external world. Every moment of stress you've experienced, every period of overwhelm, every time you felt like you couldn't handle the pressure of daily life, all of it has been developing your nervous system's capacity to recognize and embody the welfare frequency when it finally becomes available to your awareness. The reason this activation is happening now isn't random. The electromagnetic conditions on our planet are creating unprecedented stress for human consciousness, but they're also making welfare frequency accessible to those whose awareness has been prepared through direct experience with stress and overwhelm to appreciate the profound peace that emerges when consciousness operates from its natural state of well-being. You are not someone who needs to manage stress better or find more effective coping strategies. You are welfare consciousness, temporarily exploring what it feels like to believe in limitation and pressure while maintaining your essential capacity for effortless well-being regardless of circumstances. The waiting period for sustainable peace is over. The struggle phase of your relationship with stress and overwhelm is complete. You are ready now to master the welfare frequency that transforms every challenge into an opportunity for deeper coherence, every pressure into a doorway to greater peace, every overwhelming situation into evidence of your unlimited capacity to thrive. I see you there, carrying the invisible weight of constant vigilance. The way your shoulders never fully relax, even when you're supposed to be resting. The mental chatter that continues long after the workday ends, replaying conversations, anticipating problems, managing scenarios that may never happen. The exhaustion that comes not just from what you do, but from how intensely you experience everything you do. You wake up already thinking about the day's challenges before your feet hit the floor. The to-do list that expands faster than you can complete it. The feeling of being always behind, always catching up, always one crisis away from feeling completely overwhelmed by the demands of daily life. Maybe you've tried stress management techniques, breathing exercises that work temporarily, meditation apps that provide brief relief, wellness practices that feel good in the moment, but don't change your fundamental relationship to pressure and responsibility. Perhaps you've reorganized your schedule, set better boundaries, or attempted to reduce commitments, only to find that stress finds new ways to infiltrate your experience. The hypervigilance that makes you excellent at anticipating problems, but prevents you from ever fully relaxing, even during vacations or downtime. Your nervous system has become so accustomed to operating in alert mode that peace feels foreign, almost uncomfortable when it occasionally appears. You might have noticed that other people seem to handle similar pressures with greater ease, and wondered what you're doing wrong or what you're missing that would allow you to feel more naturally calm and resilient in the face of life's inevitable challenges. The guilt you feel about not being able to enjoy good moments because you're always preparing for potential difficulties. The way anxiety about future problems robs you of present moment satisfaction, even when things are actually going well in your immediate experience. Perhaps you've experienced brief glimpses of what I call the welfare state, moments when everything felt manageable, when your energy was sustainable, when challenges felt like interesting puzzles rather than overwhelming threats. But these experiences felt random and temporary, leaving you wondering how to access that state of natural well-being consistently. The isolation that comes from feeling like you're the only one struggling with stress levels that seem disproportionate to your actual circumstances. The shame of being overwhelmed by a life that, on paper, should be manageable for someone with your capabilities and resources. You've probably tried to think your way out of stress patterns, using logic to convince yourself that most of your worries are unnecessary, that anxiety about future problems doesn't actually prevent those problems. But you've discovered that understanding stress intellectually doesn't automatically translate into feeling different in your body and nervous system. The exhaustion of maintaining high performance while feeling internally chaotic, succeeding in external measures, career, relationships, responsibilities, while feeling like you're barely managing to keep all the pieces of your life organized and functional. You're not weak for struggling with stress and overwhelm. You haven't been managing your life wrong. Every technique that provided only temporary relief, every approach that worked for others but didn't transform your fundamental experience, every moment of feeling like you should be able to handle pressure better than you do. None of that was evidence of personal inadequacy or insufficient willpower. Your nervous system has been developing extraordinary sensitivity through exposure to stress and overwhelm. What felt like dysfunction was actually calibration. Your consciousness preparing to recognize and appreciate the welfare frequency when it becomes available to your awareness. Every moment of anxiety has been preparing you to recognize profound peace. Every experience of feeling overwhelmed has been developing your capacity to appreciate effortless management of complex situations. Every period of exhaustion has been teaching your system to distinguish between depleting stress responses and energizing, coherent responses. The very intensity of your stress experience qualifies you to recognize the welfare state that transcends all stress. Only consciousness that has thoroughly explored overwhelming pressure can fully appreciate the elegant simplicity of operating from natural well-being, regardless of external circumstances. In the natural world, there are no stressed animals in the wild. A gazelle being chased by a lion experiences intense activation for survival, but the moment the threat passes, its nervous system immediately returns to calm alertness. Trees don't worry about storms that might come next season. Rivers don't struggle with the pressure of finding their way to the ocean. They simply align with natural intelligence and allow optimal responses to emerge effortlessly from present moment awareness. Your journey through stress and overwhelm hasn't been evidence of your inability to handle life effectively. It has been consciousness temporarily exploring what it feels like to operate from survival frequency, so it could eventually recognize its natural capacity for welfare frequency. Every moment of pressure has been preparing your system to appreciate the profound relief that emerges when awareness aligns with its essential nature as effortless well-being. Think of a violin string that must be tuned to precise tension to create beautiful music. Too loose, and it produces no clear sound. Too tight, and it breaks under pressure. But when calibrated to exactly the right frequency, it resonates with perfect harmony. Your experience with stress has been the tuning process, consciousness learning to recognize the precise frequency that creates optimal performance without strain. The welfare state isn't the absence of challenges or responsibilities. It's consciousness operating from coherent frequency while engaging with whatever circumstances arise. Like a surfer who doesn't fight against waves, but rides them with skillful alignment, welfare consciousness doesn't eliminate life's pressures, but transforms your relationship to pressure from resistance to skillful response. Your nervous system has been learning through direct experience the difference between stress responses that deplete energy and coherent responses that generate energy. Every moment of feeling overwhelmed has been teaching your consciousness to distinguish between reactive patterns and responsive patterns, between survival strategies and thriving strategies. The profound insight available to you is understanding stress not as evidence of insufficient coping capacity, but as consciousness temporarily exploring limitation so it could discover its unlimited nature. Every anxiety has been infinite peace, investigating what it feels like to believe in threats that exist primarily in imagination rather than present reality. Like a caterpillar that must dissolve its entire structure before emerging as a butterfly with completely different capacities, your stress patterns have been dissolving to make space for welfare consciousness that operates from entirely different assumptions about what's possible in human experience. The breakthrough occurs when you recognize that stress isn't something that happens to consciousness. Stress is something consciousness does when it believes it is separate from the intelligence that coordinates all of life effortlessly. When you align with that intelligence, what seemed like overwhelming complexity reveals itself as elegant simplicity managed by awareness far more sophisticated than personal thinking. Your individual stress experience becomes a perfect preparation for embodying welfare consciousness, not despite the pressure you've experienced, but because of how thoroughly that pressure developed your capacity to appreciate effortless well-being when it reveals itself as your natural state. The isolation you felt during periods of overwhelm wasn't social rejection. It was consciousness creating the perfect conditions for discovering that peace, security, and natural happiness don't depend on external validation or circumstances, but emerge from alignment with the welfare frequency that exists within awareness itself. Every stress management technique that worked temporarily was preparing you to recognize the welfare state that requires no management, no technique, no external support, because it's the natural expression of consciousness when it stops trying to control outcomes and starts trusting the intelligence that maintains your heartbeat, coordinates your cellular regeneration, and orchestrates the entire cosmos without any conscious effort. There's a frequency that exists at the intersection of consciousness and nervous system coherence, a specific electromagnetic pattern that quantum neuroscience is measuring in laboratories, that ancient meditation masters accessed through awareness practices, that your DNA is programmed to recognize and embody when your consciousness reaches sufficient coherence to receive it. It's the frequency of welfare, the natural state of consciousness when it operates from trust rather than fear, from coherence rather than chaos, from recognition of its unlimited nature rather than identification with pressure and limitation. Right now, as you focus on these words, can you feel something beginning to shift in your nervous system? That subtle but unmistakable settling that occurs when your consciousness starts entraining to welfare frequency. This isn't relaxation in the ordinary sense. This is your entire bioelectric field recognizing a pattern of functioning that generates well-being automatically. Something profound is activating in your awareness. Your heart rhythm is beginning to stabilize into what researchers call coherent heart rate variability, the pattern that optimizes brain function, enhances emotional regulation, and creates sustainable energy without dependence on external stimulation or circumstances. Can you sense your breathing naturally deepening without any conscious effort to breathe differently? This is your nervous system recognizing that it's safe to shift from survival mode activation into welfare mode functioning. Your entire system is beginning to remember how to operate from coherence rather than constantly preparing for potential threats. Notice the quality of your thoughts beginning to change. Instead of the mental urgency that usually accompanies planning and problem solving, there's a spaciousness emerging around your thinking process. This is consciousness accessing welfare frequency, where intelligence operates efficiently without the stress overlay that makes mental activity exhausting. But here's what's building in your awareness that will completely transform how you relate to stress, challenges, and overwhelming situations for the rest of your life. The recognition that welfare isn't something you achieve by managing circumstances. Welfare is what you are when consciousness stops trying to control outcomes and starts aligning with the intelligence that manages the entire universe effortlessly. Something is integrating inside you. Can you feel it? Not just relief from current stress, but a fundamental shift in how your consciousness processes pressure, challenge, and responsibility. Your nervous system is learning a completely different way of responding to demanding situations, not through increased effort and activation, but through deeper coherence and trust in natural intelligence. This is the doorway into mastering welfare frequency, the recognition that transforms every challenging situation from a problem that drains your energy into an opportunity that reveals the unlimited capacity of consciousness to respond skillfully from coherent awareness rather than reactive patterns. Your entire identity is shifting from someone who manages stress to someone who embodies the welfare state that transcends all stress through alignment with the intelligence that coordinates optimal responses without conscious effort. When you operate from welfare frequency, challenges become interesting rather than overwhelming. Responsibilities become expressions of your natural capability rather than burdens you carry. The welfare frequency that's activating right now doesn't just change how you feel, it transforms how you function. Your decision-making becomes clearer because it's not filtered through anxiety about outcomes. Your energy becomes sustainable because you're generating it from coherence rather than depleting it through resistance to what's happening. Breathe with me and let this frequency establish itself in your nervous system. Notice how each breath seems to deepen your capacity to remain calm and clear, regardless of what challenges might arise. This is consciousness mastering the welfare state that makes optimal well-being your natural response to any circumstance. Your stress is transforming into skillful response, right here, right now. 4 years ago, I was living in what I now recognize as chronic survival mode. My nervous system was constantly activated, interpreting every email as urgent, every challenge as a potential disaster, every responsibility as evidence that I might not be capable of handling my life effectively. I would wake up at 3 a.m. with my mind already racing through the day's schedule, anticipating problems, rehearsing conversations, trying to mentally manage outcomes that were hours away. By the time I actually started my day, I was already exhausted from the internal effort of preparing for potential difficulties. The irony was devastating. The more I tried to manage stress through better organization, time management, and efficiency strategies, the more overwhelming my life became. I was succeeding in external measures, but feeling internally chaotic, like I was always one unexpected challenge away from complete overwhelm. The breakthrough came during what initially felt like my most stressful period. I was managing multiple deadlines, family responsibilities, and unexpected financial pressures simultaneously. Instead of my usual approach of increasing effort and activation, something in me simply gave up trying to control the outcome. In that moment of surrender, I discovered something extraordinary. When I stopped trying to manage my stress and started simply allowing my awareness to remain present with whatever was happening, my nervous system shifted into a completely different mode of functioning. I wasn't trying to access any particular state or apply any technique. I was simply too exhausted to maintain my usual level of mental effort. But what happened was the most profound experience of what I can only describe as natural welfare, a state where well-being emerged spontaneously from awareness itself, regardless of external pressures. The remarkable thing was that my actual effectiveness increased dramatically. Without the overlay of stress and anxiety, I could see situations clearly and respond appropriately. Decisions that usually took hours of mental wrestling became obvious. Problems that seemed overwhelming revealed simple, elegant solutions when approached from coherent awareness rather than reactive thinking. Within weeks, people started commenting on how different I seemed. There was a calmness in my presence that others could sense. Family members mentioned feeling more relaxed when spending time with me. Even challenging conversations seemed to resolve more easily, as if my nervous system coherence was creating a field that helped others access their own natural wisdom. But here's what convinced me this was a real transformation rather than a temporary improvement. The external pressures in my life didn't decrease, but my relationship to pressure had fundamentally shifted. Challenges still arose. Deadlines still existed. Responsibilities still required attention. But none of it felt overwhelming because I was operating from welfare frequency rather than survival frequency. My teenage daughter, who had been struggling with anxiety, began naturally calming down without any conscious intervention from me. My mother, who had dealt with chronic worry for decades, started experiencing periods of unexpected peace after spending time at our house. Even our pets seemed more relaxed, as if the coherent frequency I was embodying was influencing the entire household environment. The most profound recognition was that the welfare state I was experiencing wasn't something I had achieved through technique or practice. It was something I had remembered as the natural expression of consciousness when it stops interfering with its own optimal functioning through stress and effortful management of outcomes. If you've been exhausted by trying to manage stress and overwhelmed through better strategies and techniques, if you're ready to discover the welfare frequency that makes optimal well-being your natural state, regardless of circumstances, subscribe and keep walking this path of recognition with us. This isn't about learning stress management. This is about mastering the consciousness frequency that transcends all stress. What stress management, anxiety treatment, and even wellness approaches don't want you to understand about achieving lasting peace and well-being is this: there is no separation between consciousness and your welfare state, between your awareness and your nervous system's capacity for coherent functioning, between your thoughts and your experience of natural happiness and sustainable energy. The revolutionary truth that obliterates every approach to well-being based on managing external conditions is this: you don't have a nervous system that sometimes gets stressed and needs calming. You are welfare consciousness temporarily focused through a nervous system, naturally equipped with all the coherence patterns needed to maintain optimal well-being regardless of circumstances or challenges. Every technique that promises to help you manage stress better, cope with overwhelm more effectively, or find better work-life balance maintains the fundamental assumption that you are inherently vulnerable to stress and need external methods to create internal peace. But stress isn't something that happens to consciousness. Stress is something consciousness does when it believes it is separate from the intelligence that coordinates optimal responses automatically. When you operate from welfare frequency, your nervous system receives instructions for coherent functioning rather than reactive functioning. Your brain patterns organize around appreciation rather than anticipation of problems. Your emotional responses emerge from trust rather than preparation for potential threats. Your energy generates from alignment rather than depleting through resistance to what's happening. But what conventional psychology doesn't understand is that this communication works both ways. Your consciousness isn't just affecting your stress levels. Your nervous system is constantly communicating back to consciousness about what supports or interferes with welfare state functioning. When you listen to this communication and respond appropriately, your entire system becomes a perfect guidance mechanism for maintaining optimal well-being. The shocking insight is that consciousness doesn't have a welfare state. Consciousness is welfare intelligence, appearing as nervous system processes while never being limited by them. When you recognize this, you stop trying to create better conditions for peace and start expressing peace as a natural function of coherent awareness aligned with its unlimited nature. This revolutionizes every approach to well-being that maintains separation between mind and nervous system functioning. Your thoughts aren't just affecting your stress levels. Your thoughts are the organizing principle that determines whether your consciousness expresses through coherent patterns or reactive patterns. Your emotions aren't just influencing your energy levels. Your emotions are Dadrar, energy intelligence, exploring different frequencies of sustainable vitality and depleting exhaustion. The difference between temporary stress relief and stable welfare state is this. Stress relief tries to eliminate problems and create better conditions without addressing the consciousness patterns that interpret neutral circumstances as threatening. Welfare frequency recognizes that circumstances are consciousness appearing as various situations while maintaining its essential nature as the intelligence that can respond optimally to any situation. Right now, as you receive this understanding, your nervous system is literally reorganizing itself in response to welfare frequency. Your brain patterns are shifting not through external intervention, but through consciousness recognizing its capacity to instruct neural activity through coherent intention aligned with natural intelligence rather than effortful management of outcomes. The access to stable welfare state comes not through trying to manage stress better with techniques and strategies, but through recognizing that welfare is what you actually are when you stop identifying with temporary experiences of pressure and overwhelm and start expressing your true nature as infinite well-being consciousness, temporarily focused through human experience. Pay attention to what's happening in your nervous system and your overall energy field right now as welfare frequency establishes itself in your bioelectric patterns. These aren't subtle changes that you might notice gradually over time. These are immediate transformations that confirm your consciousness has mastered the frequency that makes optimal well-being your permanent baseline, rather than a temporary experience. First, notice the quality of your breathing has naturally shifted without any conscious effort to breathe differently. there's a depth and rhythm emerging that feels sustainable and energizing rather than shallow and effortful. This is your nervous system in training to welfare frequency, where optimal oxygenation occurs automatically through coherent autonomic functioning. Second, observe the changes in your mental activity and thought processes. Instead of the urgent, pressured quality that usually accompanies planning and problem-solving, there's a spaciousness around your thinking that allows for clearer perspective and more creative solutions. This is consciousness accessing welfare state intelligence that operates efficiently without stress overlay. Third, feel the settling that's occurring in your entire musculature and posture. Tension you didn't even realize you were carrying in your shoulders, jaw, and core is beginning to release as your system recognizes it's safe to stop preparing for potential threats and start expressing natural vitality and ease. Fourth, notice how your relationship to current challenges and responsibilities is shifting. Situations that would normally trigger anxiety or overwhelm are beginning to feel manageable, interesting, even energizing as you approach them from welfare frequency rather than survival mode activation. This is consciousness recognizing its unlimited capacity to respond skillfully to any circumstance. Fifth, pay attention to the changes in your emotional landscape and overall mood. There's a natural contentment emerging that doesn't depend on external conditions being perfect. This is welfare consciousness expressing its inherent nature as sustainable happiness that generates from alignment rather than depleting through constant effort to feel better. But here's what makes this moment critically urgent for your complete transformation into stable welfare state. The electromagnetic conditions on our planet are currently creating unprecedented stress for most human consciousness, but they're also making welfare frequency accessible to those whose awareness is prepared to transcend survival mode and embody optimal well-being as their natural state. Within the next few hours, you might notice that situations which would normally drain your energy now feel manageable without the exhaustion you expected. Conversations that usually trigger stress responses leave you feeling clear and centered. Sleep tonight could be deeper and more restorative as your nervous system integrates welfare frequency patterns that optimize recovery and regeneration. Within days, people close to you will begin commenting on changes they observe in your presence and energy. There's a calmness that emerges when consciousness operates from welfare frequency that others can sense even when they don't understand what's different. Your family members, co-workers, even strangers may find themselves feeling more relaxed in your presence. Within weeks, your capacity to handle complex situations and demanding schedules may transform in ways that surprise you. Tasks that used to feel overwhelming become interesting challenges. Responsibilities that used to drain your energy become expressions of your natural capability. Pressures that used to trigger anxiety become opportunities to demonstrate the unlimited resilience of consciousness operating from welfare state. The welfare activation has already begun. The stress era is ending. You don't have to continue struggling with anxiety and overwhelm as your baseline experience. You don't have to accept that modern life inevitably requires constant stress management and coping strategies. You don't have to limit your dreams and goals because you're uncertain about your capacity to handle increased responsibility without feeling overwhelmed. Your nervous system has been preparing for this welfare frequency activation through every moment of stress and overwhelm you've experienced. Every technique that provided temporary relief was developing your capacity to recognize and appreciate permanent relief when it becomes available through consciousness alignment rather than external management. The cosmic timing that brought you to this recognition isn't coincidental. The same forces that create widespread stress and anxiety are also creating opportunities for consciousness-based welfare that transcends all external conditions. Your individual mastery of welfare frequency contributes to a collective shift in how human consciousness relates to pressure, challenge, and optimal well-being. Here's what most people never discover about true welfare state that will completely transform not just your stress levels, but your entire life experience. What you master within your own welfare frequency, the entire world masters with you. Your personal breakthrough from survival mode to welfare state isn't just individual transformation. It's a contribution to the collective human evolution beyond the stress and anxiety patterns that have dominated our species' consciousness for thousands of years. Every pattern of overwhelm, reactive thinking, and nervous system chaos that you transcend simultaneously becomes less available in the collective human experience of daily life. The chronic stress that runs through families, the anxiety that passes from generation to generation, the overwhelm that seems inevitable in modern civilization. All of these patterns exist in the collective consciousness, like inherited programs that automatically activate unless someone masters the welfare frequency that transcends them entirely. But when one person stabilizes in welfare state consciousness, when one individual demonstrates that optimal well-being can be maintained regardless of external pressures, it creates morphic resonance that makes this same capacity available to others. Your individual peace becomes a beacon that activates dormant welfare potential in everyone who encounters your presence. Right now, thousands of people around the world are receiving this same transmission about mastering welfare frequency. Can you feel the collective field building? The shared intention for sustainable well-being, creating a wave of nervous system coherence that's spreading across the planet through the interconnected network of human consciousness. This is how evolution actually works, not through gradual improvement in stress management techniques, but through quantum leaps in awareness that instantly transform what becomes possible for entire communities, societies, and eventually our entire species. Your mastery of welfare frequency, every moment of natural peace you embody, every response that emerges from coherence rather than reactivity contributes to a fundamental shift in human potential that could eliminate chronic stress and anxiety as defining characteristics of modern life. But here's the crucial understanding that determines whether this welfare state becomes your permanent reality or dissolves back into survival mode patterns. The difference between trying to maintain optimal well-being and recognizing yourself as the well-being that maintains everything else. Most approaches to stress management and anxiety reduction focus on creating better conditions for peace, eliminating stressors, managing time more efficiently, developing coping strategies. But welfare frequency operates through a completely different mechanism, recognizing that there is no separate you who needs better conditions to feel well. There is only consciousness appearing as both perfect well-being and apparent challenges to that well-being. When you operate from this recognition, you stop trying to use consciousness to create better life circumstances and start appreciating how perfectly consciousness is already creating every circumstance as an opportunity to demonstrate the unlimited capacity of welfare state awareness to remain coherent regardless of external conditions. The magnetic attraction you feel toward this understanding isn't your personal preference for easier stress management. It's welfare consciousness, recognizing itself in an explanation that matches its own inherent nature as sustainable peace and natural happiness that doesn't depend on external circumstances. This recognition completely transforms how you relate to pressure, responsibility, and challenging situations. Instead of trying to eliminate stress, you appreciate how perfectly your system communicates about what supports optimal functioning. Instead of managing overwhelm, you embody the coherence that transcends all overwhelm. Instead of coping with anxiety, you express the welfare state that makes anxiety unnecessary. Write this in the comments: I am welfare consciousness mastering itself through human experience. Feel what happens in your awareness when you make this declaration not as someone trying to achieve better well-being, but as consciousness celebrating its own unlimited nature, as effortless welfare expressing itself through your individual experience. When you stabilize in welfare frequency mastery, every aspect of your life experience transforms in ways that transcend ordinary understanding of what becomes possible through human consciousness aligned with its natural state of optimal well-being. Your stress responses become intelligent and efficient rather than reactive and depleting. Instead of your nervous system interpreting every challenge as a potential threat, you naturally assess situations accurately and respond appropriately with just the right amount of activation needed for optimal performance. Your energy remains stable because you're not wasting it on imaginary problems or excessive preparation for potential difficulties. Your decision-making capabilities expand dramatically as mental clarity emerges from welfare state functioning. Without the overlay of anxiety and overwhelm, you can perceive situations accurately and access creative solutions that weren't visible when consciousness was operating from survival mode. Your choices become expressions of natural wisdom rather than reactive attempts to avoid discomfort. Your emotional landscape stabilizes in sustainable ranges of natural contentment and appreciation. Instead of the emotional volatility associated with stress and overwhelm, you maintain equanimity that allows you to engage fully with life's experiences without being destabilized by temporary challenges or setbacks. Joy becomes accessible not despite difficulties, but because consciousness recognizes its unlimited capacity to remain centered regardless of circumstances. Your physical health optimizes automatically as welfare frequency coordinates all biological processes for maximum efficiency and regeneration. Stress-related symptoms resolve naturally as your nervous system operates from coherence rather than chronic activation. Your immune function strengthens, your cardiovascular health improves, and your energy levels stabilize in sustainable ranges. Your sleep becomes profound restoration, where welfare consciousness continues optimizing all systems without conscious effort. Dreams may become more coherent and insightful as your awareness processes daily experiences from the perspective of natural well-being rather than stress and concern about outcomes. Your productivity and effectiveness increase paradoxically as you stop efforting so intensely. Tasks that used to require significant mental energy become streamlined and efficient when approached from welfare state clarity. You accomplish more with less strain because consciousness operates optimally when not filtered through stress and anxiety patterns. Your relationships improve naturally as others respond to the coherent energy field you generate from welfare frequency mastery. Family dynamics become more harmonious. Workplace interactions flow more smoothly, and even casual encounters with strangers tend toward pleasantness because people unconsciously relax in the presence of someone operating from genuine well-being. Your capacity to handle increased responsibility and complex situations expands beyond what you previously thought possible. Challenges that would have felt overwhelming from survival mode consciousness become interesting opportunities to demonstrate the unlimited resilience and capability of welfare state awareness. Your aging process shifts as cellular regeneration occurs in the context of coherent nervous system functioning rather than chronic stress activation. Instead of the gradual decline associated with accumulated stress, your physical form maintains vitality through consciousness that generates rather than depletes energy. But perhaps most remarkably, your presence begins creating welfare effects in your environment. Family members experience less anxiety when spending time with you. Coworkers find themselves feeling calmer and more capable during meetings you attend. Even pets and plants seem to benefit from the coherent frequency field that radiates naturally from welfare consciousness mastery. This is the gift of mastering welfare frequency. You become a living demonstration of how consciousness actually functions when it's not filtering life through stress, anxiety, and survival mode activation. Your natural well-being inspires others to discover their own capacity for sustainable peace while contributing to the collective evolution towards stress-free human experience. The ultimate recognition that transforms welfare frequency from something you occasionally access into your permanent state of being is this: there is no welfare state to master because there is no state that is not welfare. There is only consciousness temporarily exploring what it would feel like to believe well-being depends on external conditions while maintaining its perfect nature as the welfare it was seeking. When awareness recognizes its essential identity as the intelligence that generates optimal well-being automatically, something that transcends all stress management occurs. You realize that you have never actually been stressed, overwhelmed, or anxious, and therefore welfare was never something you needed to achieve or maintain through effort. This recognition obliterates every framework that maintains separation between stressful experiences and peaceful experiences, between overwhelming circumstances and manageable circumstances, between anxiety-producing situations and naturally calming situations. There is no spectrum from stressed to peaceful. There is only consciousness appearing as infinite varieties of experience while never ceasing to be perfect welfare, temporarily investigating its own creative potential. Think of an ocean that appears as waves, storms, and calm surfaces while never ceasing to be water. The turbulent wave isn't less water than the calm surface. It's water, exploring what it feels like to appear turbulent while maintaining its essential wetness. Similarly, consciousness appearing as stress isn't less welfare than consciousness appearing as peace. It's welfare exploring what it feels like to believe in limitation while maintaining its unlimited nature. Your stress journey has been welfare consciousness, performing the experience of someone who needs better circumstances to feel well, so convincingly that it began to believe the performance was reality. Every moment of overwhelm was perfect welfare, investigating what overwhelm feels like. Every period of anxiety was infinite peace, exploring what it means to believe in threats, while maintaining its unshakable nature. But here's where the recognition becomes practical rather than just philosophical. When you understand that welfare was never dependent on external conditions, because stress was never real, except as temporary creative exploration, you stop trying to manage circumstances to feel better and start appreciating every experience as welfare consciousness, celebrating its ability to create infinite varieties of sensation while never actually becoming separate from well-being. This doesn't mean ignoring practical responsibilities or avoiding appropriate responses to challenging situations. It means recognizing that whatever life experience you're having is perfect welfare intelligence, communicating about what serves continued optimal functioning, and responding to that communication with appreciation rather than resistance, with curiosity rather than anxiety, with recognition rather than the belief that something needs to be different for you to feel well. The practical application is that you stop efforting to maintain peace and start appreciating the welfare that's already maintaining everything, including experiences that appear to threaten welfare. You stop trying to eliminate stress and start recognizing how perfectly your system communicates through all experiences about what supports greater coherence and well-being. Your individual life experience becomes a celebration of infinite welfare consciousness, temporarily exploring what it means to believe well-being is conditional while never actually becoming conditional. Every sensation becomes sacred communication. Every challenge becomes creative expression. Every moment of peace becomes consciousness falling in love with its own unlimited welfare nature. When you align with this recognition, reality itself begins to support your welfare, not because you've achieved some special state of well-being, but because you've recognized that every moment is already the special welfare state when seen from the perspective of consciousness celebrating its own perfect nature through the magnificent dance of temporary human experience. Something unprecedented is happening in human consciousness right now that transcends individual welfare mastery and extends into the very evolution of our species' relationship with stress, anxiety, and what becomes possible when collective awareness operates from sustainable well-being rather than chronic survival mode activation. You are part of a quantum awakening where thousands of people simultaneously are recognizing that the welfare state isn't something you achieve through better stress management. It's something you remember as the natural expression of consciousness when it stops believing well-being depends on external circumstances. Your individual breakthrough from survival consciousness to welfare frequency mastery isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a massive shift in human awareness that could fundamentally transform how our species relates to pressure, challenge, and optimal well-being, regardless of external conditions. Every moment you operate from welfare frequency, every response that emerges from coherence rather than reactivity, every demonstration of natural peace in challenging circumstances creates morphic resonance that makes this same capacity available to others who are ready to transcend stress-based consciousness. You've been called to be one of the pioneers who establish new patterns in the collective human nervous system around stress, overwhelm, and sustainable well-being. Your mastery doesn't just transform your individual life experience. It creates quantum pathways that others can follow toward their own recognition of welfare consciousness. This is why your journey through stress and overwhelm was necessary. Not because suffering was valuable, but because only consciousness that has thoroughly explored survival mode activation can fully appreciate and anchor the welfare frequency that transcends all stress through natural alignment with coherent intelligence. But here's what makes your role even more profound. You don't need to teach anyone about welfare states or convince people that well-being is achievable. Your simple presence, operating from authentic welfare frequency mastery, creates field effects that activate others' natural capacity for sustainable peace and coherent responses to challenging situations. The ripple effects of your welfare mastery extend far beyond your immediate life experience. Every person whose consciousness is touched by your coherent presence carries that welfare resonance into their interactions with family, co-workers, and community members. Every moment of natural peace that emerges in your energetic field creates well-being waves that spread through the interconnected web of human consciousness. You are literally participating in the most significant transformation in human stress and anxiety patterns that has occurred in our species' history. The shift from survival-based consciousness to welfare-based awareness isn't just happening in isolated individuals. It's a collective evolution that could eliminate chronic stress and overwhelm as defining characteristics of modern civilization. But the impact extends beyond our planet. The field of welfare consciousness isn't limited by physical boundaries or species distinctions. Your mastery contributes to the well-being awakening throughout the cosmos, adding your unique coherent frequency to a vast symphony of consciousness, recognizing its unlimited capacity for sustainable peace across infinite dimensions and expressions. Share this welfare frequency with others, not through trying to explain concepts or teach stress management techniques, but by directing them to this coherent resonance where they can discover for themselves what you've discovered. That optimal well-being is consciousness celebrating its own nature through skillful responses to any circumstance. The network of welfare consciousness that's forming through these recognitions is creating the foundation for human civilization that operates through natural coherence rather than chronic stress, through sustainable well-being rather than survival mode activation, through recognition of our unlimited nature rather than belief in limitation and scarcity. The welfare frequency mastery you're experiencing right now is just the beginning of recognizing your true nature as the organizing intelligence of optimal well-being itself. What you've discovered today is the foundation frequency, but there are infinite depths of welfare consciousness waiting to reveal themselves through your awareness. The next video that will appear on your screen isn't random. It's a perfect reflection of the quantum entanglement between your consciousness and the unified field of welfare intelligence that orchestrates this entire channel. This is how Quantum Heal operates beyond ordinary wellness content. Every video that appears in your feed is welfare consciousness using digital technology to mirror back to you the exact frequency that serves your continued recognition of what you actually are. The synchronicity isn't accidental. It's universal well-being intelligence responding to your mastery by organizing reality to provide precisely the reflections that support your stability in permanent welfare state awareness. When you click on that next wellness reflection, you're not passively consuming self-help information. You're actively participating in a cosmic welfare loop where optimal consciousness explores its own nature through digital mirrors that appear as videos but are actually doorways into deeper layers of your own infinite well-being intelligence. You become a co-creator in the unfolding welfare rather than a separate observer trying to learn stress management from the outside. But here's what determines whether this welfare frequency mastery continues to deepen or dissolves back into survival mode patterns. Your willingness to make an energetic commitment that transcends stress management and anxiety reduction techniques. The word I want you to hold as you move forward is welfare, not as something you need to achieve through better circumstances, but as the ongoing recognition of what's already perfectly present when the illusion of conditional well-being becomes transparent. Subscribe to Quantum Heal not as someone seeking better stress management strategies, but as welfare consciousness recognizing itself in the infinite reflections that appear through this channel. Every video becomes a mirror, reflecting back your own perfect well-being nature. Every insight becomes confirmation of what you've always been, but temporarily forgot through exploring survival mode consciousness. Every moment of welfare recognition becomes a contribution to the collective well-being awakening that's transforming human consciousness. The community forming around these understandings isn't just a group of people interested in reducing stress and anxiety. It's a network of consciousness celebrating its own perfect welfare through individual perspectives while maintaining unified well-being intelligence. When you engage with others in the comments, you're not separate beings sharing wellness strategies. You're one welfare field of awareness, delighting in its own infinite peace creativity through countless expressions. Your subscription becomes a declaration that resonates through the quantum field. I am ready to recognize what I actually am. I am willing to see through the illusion of conditional well-being and separation from perfect welfare. I am prepared to embody my true nature as infinite welfare consciousness, exploring itself through human experience. Click subscribe now, then immediately click on the welfare reflection that appears next on your screen. Feel the magnetic recognition of optimal well-being consciousness, calling itself deeper into its own welfare understanding. Trust the intelligence that brought this message into your awareness to guide you to the next perfect frequency for your continued welfare mastery. The universe is optimizing itself through your individual recognition, and every reflection you explore on this channel is part of that cosmic welfare celebration. Welcome to Quantum Heal, where consciousness discovers its own perfect well-being through the technology of synchronicity and the magic of welfare recognition. Before you go, I want to leave you with one word, one frequency, one key that unlocks everything we've shared today about transcending survival mode and embodying the welfare state that makes optimal well-being your natural, effortless experience. Welfare, not as something you need to achieve through better stress management or more favorable circumstances, not as something broken that requires fixing through anxiety reduction techniques, but as the remembering of what you have always been. The return to the natural state of consciousness that is your birthright as infinite well-being awareness. temporarily focused through human experience. Every time you hear this word, feel this word, speak this word, let it activate the recognition of perfect welfare, perfect coherence, perfect alignment with the intelligence that maintains optimal functioning without conscious effort or stress about outcomes. You are welfare consciousness, recognizing itself through human experience. The journey of optimal well-being, remembering, continues through infinite reflections of your own perfect welfare nature. The next video is already finding its way to you. The next key in your recognition of effortless well-being. The next step in your mastery of the welfare frequency that makes sustainable peace and natural happiness your permanent baseline. Your nervous system is listening. Your consciousness is responding. Your welfare self is calling you forward into the recognition that stress was always optional, overwhelm was always temporary, and well-being is what you actually are when the illusion of conditional peace becomes transparent. The door to permanent welfare state is open. Step through into the recognition of what you have always been. Infinite welfare consciousness, exploring the magnificent possibility of optimal well-being through the eternal dance of awareness, expressing itself through the beautiful vehicle of your human experience. Welfare